Gliscor might be getting banned from Gen 9 OU, which is pretty weird. Gliscor is a historically excellent Pokemon that has been ranked OU in every generation it's ever appeared in, but it has never been powerful enough to be the victim of a suspect test. In Gen 9, Gliscor has reached the absolute peak of its power. Gliscor is number 1 on the post-DLC viability rankings, and in the recent community survey, the majority of the qualified player base believed that Gliscor was too powerful for OU. What is so good about Gliscor right now, and why do people want it banned? Gliscor is the most popular defensive utility Pokemon in the game right now, folks. And it's much better in Gen 9 than it ever has been for a few reasons. First of all, is that it gained the new option Spikes, and in Gen 9 this is an incredible option to have. Spikes are better in Gen 9 than they have been for a while, even though they've always been great. But the presence of Gholdengo in Gen 9 OU, the first ever Pokemon that can straight up block Defog and Rapid Spin at the same time, hazard stacking is a popular strategy in general. We've seen it with, Ting-Lu Gholdengo teams. When the game first came out, those are still good as well. And then Hisui and Samurott plus Gholdengo teams, which are also still good. And now Gliscor is yet another spike setter. And Gliscor has myriad utility on top of setting spikes. It is completely immune to status thanks to its ability Poison Heal. It has exceptional chip healing, which gives it a lot more longevity compared to other utility ground types like Great Tusk and Landorus Therian, who have much more limited HP. They're vulnerable to status, and their health is much more of a limited resource. Gliscor, however, can heal absurd amounts with Toxic Orb and Poison Heal, and be completely immune to status. That is extremely valuable. Knockoff also doesn't remove its chip heal effect, which is also incredible. You can soak item removal on this thing, and it doesn't even affect it. It doesn't care at all. It's also got incredible utility that a lot of Pokemon have lost. A lot of Pokemon lost access to Toxic, Knockoff, U-Turn, these important options. Although Gliscor did lose some options itself, like it doesn't have Defog anymore, it doesn't have Roost anymore, the utility it does have is much greater than many other Pokemon. And Gliscor is really just dominating the market of utility defensive Pokemon to the point of kind of putting a stranglehold on the metagame. And this is the first time in quite a while that a primarily defensive Pokemon is being suspect tested like this. I think the last example was Mega Sableye in Gen 6, who was very overwhelming with its Magic Bounce set. Some other things to consider are the fact that Hidden Power no longer exists, and we didn't see the impact of this in Gen 8 because Gliscor was not in Gen 8, but the lack of Hidden Power is a massive buff to this Pokemon, because Hidden Power Ice used to be a universal option that anyone could have that had the benefit of threatening, a lot of common Pokemon. Hidden Power Ice was really common because it would hit Garchomp, Landorus Therian, Dragonite, and Gliscor all in one, so it was everywhere, and it kept Gliscor from being too OP defensively because it was threatened by 2-hit KOs from things far weaker, and HP Ice had widespread use that was popular and effective. But now that universal coverage option is no longer here. There's Terra Blast Ice, but there's obviously like a commitment associated with that you can't always be running that. And not only this, Gliscor can also Terastallize, which is really good with such a powerful defensive ability and complete immunity to status and all this chip heal. Terastallizing is really high value in Gliscor. It's one of the best Pokemon to Terastallize with, usually, with Terra types like Water or Fairy. Or there are even these Swords Dance sets, and some of them I've seen run Terra Normal, which is a decent defensive type neutrally against a lot of stuff, and boosts Facade up. This Swords Dance set is sometimes seen. I think the defensive set is far more common though. Yeah, the environment of Gen 9, the new options that this Pokemon got, and options that other Pokemon lost, including Hidden Power, the utility that Landorus lost, and in general, the utility a lot of Pokemon are lacking right now, has pushed Gliscor into this monopoly of defensive utility that might be unhealthy for the game. It's interesting, folks. If we look at all these recent survey results, they asked about a lot of Pokemon. Manaphy, Ogerpon Wellspring, Kingambit, Roaring Moon, Gholdengo, Gliscor. And Roaring Moon is obviously now banned, but interestingly, like Manaphy, people do seem to think it's powerful, but not enough to be ban-worthy at this time. Same with Ogerpon Wellspring. Guess there's enough counterplay in the metagame, people think. Maybe these will become problems later, but for now, there's bigger fish to fry. Kingambit, quite a lot of support from general players. 3.93 and 3.62 from qualified. And Gholdengo, quite a lot, more than Kingambit. Gliscor, though, was the number one. that most people wanted some action to be taken. 3.99 from the qualified player base, which I guess they thought was enough to launch a suspect test. So some have argued that Goldango is the bigger issue in the metagame right now than Gliscor. Goldango is the prime reason that the metagame is skewing so much towards hazard stacking, and people think that's unhealthy. It's a buff to hyper offense and sticky webs, spike spam, these kinds of teams, and Goldango being so central is incentivizing people to run Great Tusk to win the hazard war. And it's, even though Goldango itself as a threat is not that difficult to answer, the effect that Goldango has on the greater metagame, skewing it towards these hazard spam strategies, some players believe to be unhealthy, and this is a reason Gliscor is so good, is because it pairs well with Goldango. It's an interesting question. I mean, me personally, I might describe these claims as slanderous towards Goldango. I understand that perspective, but I want to make it clear to Goldango's legal team, if they're watching this, that I don't hold any of these beliefs towards Goldango. I think Goldango is actually a very honest and altruistic Pokemon that has never done anything wrong, in my view. And I think, in fact, Gliscor might be launching a smear campaign against Goldango to take the heat off itself in this trying time. Gliscor is clearly a toxic presence, and trying to pin your evil doings onto Goldango is very selfish and, quite frankly, not acceptable in my view. So yeah, folks, if you're a Gliscor fan or perhaps a Gliscor hater, make your voice heard, qualify for the suspect, vote on Gliscor's fate. It's all in your hands, gamers. Personally, I hope that they revisit King Gambit in the future. I feel like King Gambit, the community's kind of come around on it and doesn't view it as much of a problem anymore. In fact, thinks of it as like an important check to certain things. I feel like King Gambit being a check to things that you need is emblematic that something's going wrong. The fact that you need King Gambit in the back with its Supreme Overlord boosts to like sucker punch stuff, it doesn't sit right with me. I feel like King Gambit is this really dominant and powerful presence. That's one I was surprised with, but the community voted against banning King Gambit. Last thing I want to mention is this. Many players thought that Landorus, Therian, and Toxapex would drop to UU for the first time. It didn't happen. Landorus was just shy of dropping, and miraculously, look at this. Heatran is back. What did I say, folks? I told you Heatran would come back. Many people thought it was Heatrover. It was never Heatrover. Heatran is the king. He's back. And look at who's rising to OU. Alomomola. What a success story. Alomomola with Scald Wish Flip Turn is becoming a really popular defensive pivot. Let's go. First OU presence for Alomomola, rising from like PU in the past. What a story. It is also with a heavy heart that I must announce Tyranitar has fallen back down to RU, which is just really sad, folks. We all thought that receiving knockoff in the DLC would be enough of a buff to at least keep it in UU, but no, folks. That was wishful thinking. Tyranitar has truly fallen from grace big time. It's back to RU. I at least hope that it's better than Iron Thorns. If Iron Thorns outclasses Tyranitar, we are truly lost. Anyway, that's all, folks. If you want to watch gameplay from a generation where there's no chaos, no constant bans, and no suspect tests going on, check out the tournament games from ADV Revival over on Jimothy Gaming, my second channel. I'll catch you all later. Thank you to the patrons for your continued support, and thank you as well to everyone who has donated to the prize pool for this tournament.
Oh, KO'd by one hit! It scattered spike!
The money got different, cause of what I'm spending.